Hey, heroes! Hold on one moment while I get seated. I am just about ready to start this stream. Oh, gotta get in the shot. I'm just about ready to start the stream. I gotta pull up some questions and make sure everything is working. I also have to tweet out the stream itself. So I will do that right now. I apologize at the beginning of this is going to be very boring, but I'm going to cut it in post, right? Oh, this is a live show. This is a live show. So that is not exactly going to work out the way that I would prefer it to, but that's what we got to deal with. So, say critical success is live. Okay, really, really good TV that we're making right now. Do I have anybody in the chat yet? I will check on that in a second. Okay, yeah, oh, cool, hey, cool. Welcome, very welcome. Oh my God, my eyes are so bad. Thank you so much for joining. Silver Boy, thank you for joining us. That's Schwamclutch, thank you. I'm just tweeting out the link to this so other people will join us. This is very, very hilarious. And there we go. Okay. Hey, everybody. I am doing an episode of Critical Success. If you have not checked that out yet, Critical Success is an advice show that I ran on the One Shot Network. Actually, pretty shortly after we launched One Shot, I started doing Critical Success. And Critical Success was very well received as a project. And I liked doing it quite a bit, but it also was not, very quickly became something that I did not have time to produce. And I think that is more a factor of when I started One Shot, I was not in the best place in life. And the stuff that I did for One Shot was literally all I thought about all day, every day. And as life became healthier, it became less healthy for me to be sinking so much time into One Shot. So it sort of pod faded a little bit. And, initially we thought that we'd be able to bring the project back with the Patreon, but it turns out that the amount of money that you need to buy the time for something like Critical Success is actually overwhelmingly different than what you assume it will be when you've literally never been paid for performance of any kind. So recently I have been doing these Critical Success streams where I talk to people live and answer some questions that they have. I also crowdsourced a couple questions before I did this stream when on another day when I thought I would be able to do Critical Success. So I'm just gonna pull up those questions really quick before we get started here. But yeah, this is a show where I mostly talk about GMing advice or playing advice, really anything in the realm of RPGs. So if you've got something that has been burning on your mind that you've been wondering about One Shot, about RPGs, about how all of this stuff works, I am happy to answer those questions. I am also going to be talking a little bit about our ongoing Kickstarter project for the Dungeon Dome. Now, if you have not seen my social media feed, which is right now inundated with Dungeon Dome information, the Dungeon Dome is a new actual play project that I am running that combines D&D, the storytelling power of D&D, with the style of professional wrestling. It is a campaign where we are doing player versus player gladiator matches, and we're playing with the sort of high drama, personality driven style of pro wrestling. So if you're a fan of pro wrestling or you're like a fan of sports anime or anything like that, I think you'll enjoy the Dungeon Dome. Really, if you like anything that we do on One Shot, I think you'll enjoy the Dungeon Dome. That Kickstarter is live right now. I don't have somebody with me running the stream. I am alone this week, so I don't have the ability to drop that into the chat myself. But if you want to check it out, you can head over to our Kickstarter and just search for the Dungeon Dome. We are the only Dungeon Dome on air. I have almost managed to pull up this critical success thing. Nope, that's Kickstarter text. And here we go, critical success questions. And almost, oh my gosh, I didn't even make this a live link, huh? Okay, that was really foolish. All right, let's head here and get some critical success questions. So our first question comes from Kaylin Barker. And the question is, do you have any tips for a GM with a bad memory for rules or a bad memory for anything else for that matter? Okay, hi Muller Duck. So this question is a really good question, primarily because I think a lot of RPG stuff, like you benefit from having a good memory. What you're trying to do is juggle different moments and stitch them together. That's like basic storytelling elements. If you want to have a really cool story-driven RPG, being able to find different character aspects, different character moments, and tie them together will make for a more impressive story. So when you're operating with a bad memory, you're operating with a handicap. And especially you're operating with a handicap when it comes to rules, because, you know, retaining rules, it's not that you need to know rules to be a good game master. You need to feel confident to be a good game master. And if you don't remember the rules, it is very possible to start to lose confidence in yourself. The most stressful games for me are the ones where I am really grappling with the rules system that I have chosen to work with. If it doesn't make sense to me, if it's, you know, just not gelling in my head, then I have a real confidence problem at the table. I start to feel overwhelmed, and like I start to just not perform as well. And usually in those situations, I lean more heavily on story. If I don't remember the rules, I just do what I think would be most interesting in that moment. Like as for rules, one thing I will say, if you are playing a campaign, if it's not just a series of one-shots with people who haven't played the game before, like what I do, if you're playing a campaign with other players who are excited to be playing the game, chances are there is another person at the table who knows the rules or who is like taken the time to invest in different rules. Generally speaking, with crunchier games, I tend to lean on players and say, look, I'm going to trust you to know how to play your characters properly. In Shadowrun, I am not going to know all of the hacking rules. I am going to trust that, you know, I have a basic framework and that my hacker understands how their abilities work and they will, you know, be able to actively pursue the things that they need to pursue in order to be a successful hacker. What I, as the GM, need to know is how to present that person with challenges. And, you know, the same thing, like I'm not going to know all adept powers. I'm not going to know all spell effects. Like each different area of the rules, I'm depending on a player to understand that. And you can, like as a GM, take that a step further and go, hey guys, I am not feeling super confident with the rules, or I don't feel confident with my memory generally. I'm going to be leaning on you a little bit during the game. If I get lost, feel free to pipe in with what you know the rule to be, and we'll go from there. And there might be a certain, there might be certain situations where you go, are you sure that that doesn't make sense to me? And like, it's okay to stop the game and look up the rules in the book, you know? That does happen sometimes when we're recording one shot. We just cut it because when I'm looking in a book, it's a bunch of dead air. So like that sort of thing happens. Like it's okay to stop and learn something and get to know better. And in this instance, would you rely on house rules just to speed things up? Absolutely. One of the better techniques that I have seen online for dealing with a rules lawyer is going, okay, there's a disagreement about rules at the table. I think one thing, you think another thing, this other person thinks a third thing. What we're going to do is go with my GM solution for now, knowing that it might not be the solution as stated by the rules. And then after the game is over, we will look it up. And from now on, because we will have looked that rule up, we will know what the rules are. But you know, the GM has the ability, and frankly, the players like have the ability to look at a rule and go, that's not right for this situation. That is not right for this table. We even feel that it's not right for this game. You know, the rule book is really just a suggestion, like at the end of the day. There will be people who think, well, that's not playing pure to the system, but like the system is there to serve you. Like the person who writes the rule book is not like sitting there at your game table with you in like 99.9999% of games played. And because of that, like you don't have to adhere to what they think is right and proper. You have to do what's right for your game. Like, and ultimately, that's what any game master has to do. You just have to do what is right for you and your table. So, like, it's all very flexible. And like, even GMs that I have played with who designed the game they're playing will be referencing the rulebook. Like, Ken Hite, when he ran the Dracula dossier for us, he had his copy of Trail of Cthulhu on hand because, you know, Ken, who is, I think, one of the human beings that I've met in my life who has a deeply impressive memory, you know, has also admitted that as he grows older, that memory is failing him in certain ways. And one of the things that he's sacrificing with his tremendous memory is the rules to the games that he has literally made himself with his own dang hands. So he looks them up in the rule book occasionally, and that is fine. And that is more than fine, that is good. So if you are a GM who does not feel confident in their memory for rules, my suggestion to you are have the rule book on hand, be prepared to skip over and patch and be flexible with the game when it's going to be too cumbersome to look things up, and trust your players and be able to lean on your group. Now we get into the really interesting part of what you do about a bad memory when you are dealing with story. Story, like I said earlier, does depend pretty heavily on memory. Excuse me while I take this sip. Oh, yeah, this is actually a really good comment that we got in the chat from Peg Clint. Be willing to be confident of your ignorance to move forward in the game, even if memory fails momentarily. That's great. Being confident in your ignorance, like going, hey, I don't know this rule, and being able to admit that, because like I've seen too many tables where somebody doesn't know a rule and they just want to stick to like the thing that they did wrong. Like I have certainly like a couple times in my life had that problem. I think they've been in campaign recordings with like the force rules for Edge of the Empire, which I have only partially grasped. I learned them once and then now they're mostly gone. So there are a lot of things that I have to question. And being able to admit when you just don't know what is going on, and when you have to rely on somebody else or when you have to look it up in the book, that is a good thing. Because like what I think annoys players more than not playing by the rules is when you don't admit that you're not playing by the rules. Because like, at least if you say, hey, this isn't within the rules, they can look at what's going on and going, okay, we know we're breaking the rules and I am agreeing to let this happen. I do have agency in this situation. Back to story. So what's interesting with story is because it drives a lot of the game, because major moments in storytelling, like all of the cool scenes. Like let's just talk about L5R for a second. Jim's game, the first L5R that came out on the One Shot Network. Everything that was cool about that dueling scene was balanced on a tower of all of the moments that preceded it. The drawn out and frustrating investigation that couldn't give us a solid answer. The fact that we were like confused about whether or not we had identified Daigotsu Jin as like a guilty party. The fact that we didn't know if we were making the right decision that we were forced to make. The fact that we didn't know how powerful Daigotsu Jin was as a person. Like, I knew that I had a character that was a relatively good duelist, but I didn't know anything about Daigotsu, who was like a complete NPC. He could have been like a boss level NPC that was, there to like sucker us into a duel, and maybe dueling wasn't the right choice. There was the fact that Muramoto was stepping into a situation where he was out of his comfort zone, and like he was outside of really like any society that he knew. The only things that he knew, he had like learned from people who are like basically the only people in the world who believe in evidence and truth over authority. So, and there's also, God, I can't remember Michael's character's name, his relationship that was like sort of hanging in the balance of that. There was the honor of the Crab Clan itself hanging in the balance of that. Oh boy, is the audio sync is off? No. Oh. Okay, guys. How bad is the audio sync? Let me know how bad the audio sync is if it's like really, really terrible. I because I don't have somebody running the stream with me, don't have a lot of power to fix it, unfortunately. A second or two? A second is really bad. Okay, boy. Okay, well, I'm glad that you guys can tough it out because like Pat was not able to make it tonight and Mel is not here. So like I am basically just running on what I got. So anyway, the point that I was making earlier is that moment was balanced on top of all those other moments. So the fact that you have a bad memory and that you can't remember things that happened earlier in the game that might be major moments that need to come back can affect your storytelling ability. If you have a good narrative sense, I think the best solution for this is just keeping a notebook. It's not something that I do. I do lean pretty heavily on my memory, which, as I get older, might not work so well. But, I'm not the type who takes really good notes. But a note doesn't have to be fully writing out a scene. It can be something like just writing down that, Miramoto's mother works in the investigative class in this clan. Knowing that you can reference that and bring that up later as you build up to your dramatic climax is helpful. Just pulling in major useful character moments, weaknesses, strengths, aspects is useful. Just understanding your characters and who they are as people is useful. This way, you might not be able to remember everything about you might not be able to remember everything about what the specific details that drive a character. You might not remember the fact that, a character is traumatized from a moment in his backstory where he had a loved one killed in front of them. All you need to remember is, oh, this character is like afraid of blood. Because, you know, somebody being traumatized by a memory, like you can sort of you do something with that, but mostly what you're using there is the fact that you can provoke an emotion from a character. So why they feel a certain emotion doesn't matter so much as the fact that you can provoke them to feel it. So what I would do is take notes on things that you think can be used to motivate characters. And games like Apocalypse Worlds like really help with this. Like anything powered by the apocalypse, a character is basically just a big pile of motivations and things like that. So a lot of story game oriented games will, you know, have character sheets that just give you all the dang details that you can pull on. But otherwise, you know, I really think the solution there is just keeping a notebook. Other than that, like, I don't know how a bad memory would affect you otherwise, because like somebody who is good at improv, like I think I could put down like a super talented trained improviser in Chicago in a GM seat, and you'd just be able to feed that person a situation and they would be able to help you steer, they would be able to GM it fine. Because what they're doing is just taking snippets of information that are in front of them and tilting it towards drama. And you don't need to know a ton about characters or a ton about you know, who people are to do that. You know, you just need to know the bare elements, like what is it going to take to make a person do something that I think is interesting. Yeah, Joe, this is critical success. Critical success is basically GMing advice. So that was my answer to Kaylin Barker. Thank you so much, Kaylin, for sending in that question. I am going to open up another question that was put into this Twitter thread. And our next question, comes from one of my favorite people, Sophia. Sophia, also known as @SkullMutant on Twitter. Sophia helps run the One Shot Wiki. It is a very cool, very useful resource for people like me, you know, who don't have flawless memories and don't remember everything that happened maybe on campaign. I love Sophia, and I love everybody who helps that wiki stay going, because it just makes things so much easier. It helps me remember which actors we've had on the show sometimes, and that rules. Okay, and Sophia asks, how do you deal with encounter difficulty in heavy systems like D20 when you don't want to kill party members? Let me noodle on this. Okay. I think one of the best things that you can do to mitigate difficulty is not think of monsters and bosses as chess pieces, but to think of them as people with motivations. So in D&D, generally speaking, when people enter a combat, there is like the inclination that like at the end of the combat, all of the enemies that are in the combat are going to be dead. And that is not like really how fighting works in life. Like, you know, we're not fighting wars to the last man. Like when that shit happens, it's genocide and it's like scarier and creepier. So like what's more likely to happen in life is that people are going to fight until one side feels like it's losing, and then they're going to like stop. Like people are going to like retreat or surrender or something like that. So if you find out like mid-combat, oh boy, my PCs are being a lot squishier than I thought they were, like, you can give them opportunities to run away. Like you can make it clear that that is the thing that is going to be like the solution to this particular fight. If you straight up just need them to win the fight, like they have to win this fight in order to move the story forward, what you're doing is balancing game mechanics against what you want to happen as the GM. The game mechanics state that this fight isn't over until all of the hit points on this particular monster are gone. And so that this character has not lost this fight until you have depleted them of hit points. The best place to send questions? I think the best place to send questions right now, you can send them either to the Reddit. I have on our One Shot Reddit a thread open where you can contribute, or you can tweet them at me. Just respond to the Critical Successes live post, and I'll answer them from there. But anyway, getting back. So the game says that the encounter is not over until, you know, the rules say it's over, and those rules are balanced upon die rolls that you really can't control. You, as the game master, know that, like, this fight isn't particularly important. This isn't a boss fight. This isn't a fight that I think the character should lose. This is a fight that I just want them to have fun with. If that's the case, if they're just not performing the way that you think they should, then just fudge it, you know? Like, it's there are a lot of people who get really up in arms about it, but like at the end of the day, it's what you need as the GM. And if you are overpowering your PCs unintentionally, then guess what? It's okay to ignore those rules. Those rules are making your game worse. And you don't have to be a purist about that. We would not ban you for posting links, Muller Duck. Anyway, like you just don't have to be a purist about that sort of thing. If you are killing PCs, I do think if PCs are beating your challenge unexpectedly, like there's a little bit less flexibility there. You know, if they've outmaneuvered their opponents like in a really witty and interesting way, that should be rewarded, and not like, don't tack extra hit points onto your boss encounter unless you know it's just going to make things more interesting and not more dangerous. Like if you killed PCs because you managed to tack a little more hit points or a little bit more damage onto a monster, like that's not an impressive feat because like you're the DM and you could have decided anything. So like it is, I think, noble and honorable to favor the party in a situation where they are underperforming in a way that you didn't expect. And I think it's like a little less good to use that fudging power and authority to like act against the party. You know, that said, the other alternative is like you can go, hey guys, this monster is performing better than I thought this monster was going to perform. And it looks like based on the way things are going now, you are going to lose this fight. Would you be interested in running away? Would you be interested in getting captured? How would you like this to play out? Because, you know, the party might be all in. Like, if you offered them as the boss, if you're like, I am the big bad boss and I've seen that I'm destroying you, surrender. If you're doing that in fiction, I think it is very unlikely that your party is going to surrender. But if you, as the GM, their good buddy, go, hey, you guys aren't doing well, what if we did a surrendering storyline instead? You might be interested in finding out, you know, where that path leads. Oh man, I'm glad that the lag was at least a little bit entertaining there. So moving on from that, Any other tips for a boss is outperforming? Yeah, you don't have to treat everything as a unit. If they're fighting like a monster and that monster has like minion support, like if it's a troll that has a bunch of goblins hanging out with it, maybe the troll is like cool to fight forever until his last breath, and maybe the goblins are cowards. So you can remove an advantageous element from the combat that works in the PC's favor. And this is also true with environmental factors. Like, it doesn't just have to be you straight up taking goblins out of the fight because they ran away. You could do something like, if they're fighting the troll in a cave, it can have a big wild swing and rocks can fall on it, changing the landscape, making it harder for the troll to move around. Or those rocks can fall and injure the troll. Like, you can even things out through environmental factors. And if you're clever about the way you're tying things in, you can make it seem like it's a plan that you had all along. You can like even go like a really simple thing is we have, let's say the cleric is down, the wizard is out of spells, you've got one ranger left barely hanging on, and you've got a monster that is still doing pretty well. It's come up to the ranger's turn, and you just say to your ranger, before you act, make a spot check. If they roll even like a little bit competently, you can say, you notice a stalactite is above this troll's head. It looks pretty precarious. And you give your ranger the option of shooting their bow at, you just reply to the critical success tweet. You could have your ranger shoot a bow at that stalactite, drop it on that troll's head for a lot more damage than average, and maybe even out that playing field. So I think there are a lot of things you can do. You can straight up fudge stuff. You can ask your party if you want to explore alternative solutions. You can change the landscape either by making the scenery itself advantageous to the PCs, or by adjusting who and what is in the fight by introducing role-playing elements to otherwise sort of more mechanical encounters. Or you can introduce new information that was not established earlier that works in the PC's favor. I think any of those solutions are good. Really, it just depends on what you want to do in the moment. Like the question that you have to ask yourself, if your PCs are underperforming, it's just, how do I make my PCs perform better? What would be an advantage to these characters in the fiction if it suddenly like happened? And I think the solution should almost never be an NPC shows up and saves them. Like, I don't think that's as fun, because like the PCs are the hero of the story, and unless there's an NPC that they just really groove on and like, you're probably better off just like making environmental factors that didn't occur, that like you didn't call out earlier, suddenly apparent. So, okay. I am going to do a question from the Reddit, and then I will turn to tonight's Twitter post. I just need to navigate to Reddit first. And oh my God. Okay, I know. Hey, real quick, because I just navigated to Reddit and it reminded me, One Shot is really into calls for action, and right now we are fighting a pretty important battle for net neutrality. I'm not going to take the time to explain net neutrality now. I'm hoping that most of you are sort of like filled in on what net neutrality is, and if not, you can Google it right after this stream ends. What we need from folks like you is to contact your representatives. There's a post going around that's got a link that sends automatic emails off to your representatives. But the most effective thing that you can do that costs no money is to just call your representatives. So take some time to contact your representatives right now. I am going to log into Reddit here. Thanks, Muller Duck. And I am going to the One Shot Podcast subreddit. If you're a Redditor and don't know, we do have a subreddit. It is One Shot Podcast. Okay. So the most upvoted question is coming from Omega Redneck. Okay, Omega Redneck. How does an aspiring GM like me hone his improv skills at the table? I live out in the middle of nowhere, so actual improv classes are out of reach. How do I develop the skills to not say, well, geez, guys, when an unexpected NPC conversation crops up, then break out the same easy character voice I always default to? Okay. This is a good question. It's a question that I think there is no easy answer for. I won't say that like taking improv classes is like even the best way to learn to improvise. I think the tough answer about learning to improvise is that the best way to do it is practice. So, like, challenging yourself to come up with new things as they come and not deal with prepared situations is probably your best thing. And my best recommendation for that is to play a game that fosters improv. There are a ton of games that have taken lessons that took me years to learn in improv to be able to use as a performer. That like just sort of do it for you or handle the important stuff for you. The first one that I want to talk about is Fiasco. So in improv, we learn that one of the big things that drives scenes is relationship. Relationship more than anything else, more than just like being a super funny comedic genius who can think up the weird, fun thing to say all the time. Relationship will drive a scene. So if you are entering a scene with relationship and intention and goals for your characters, it is much, much, much more likely that you're going to come out with an interesting scene on the other end of it. Fiasco, as a game, provides you with relationship, it provides you with motivations, and it provides you with simple things that might inspire or spark a scene, like objects and settings, places. So if you are somebody who doesn't really get improv, play a game of Fiasco and like figure out what about those relationships and those assumptions is driving the game. Like, I think you should play it a couple times because like you will find after a couple games of Fiasco, like Fiasco doesn't really have much mechanically going on. It's not like you are rolling out moves like an apocalypse world. It basically says, these are who your characters are and this is what they want. Go! And like at the end of the game, it's got some like random fill-in stuff with the tilt and whatnot, and with the how does your character's story end roll. So like there is some mechanical stuff in there, but really the majority of what's happening with Fiasco is you establish the relationship at the beginning of the game, and there are dice present at the table to make you feel like you're playing a game. And like the rest of it is just the magic of improv. Now it takes an improviser like a very, very long time to learn how to make the assumptions that create strong relationships. My favorite improv game, do you mean like improv game, or my favorite improv RPG? My favorite improv RPG I think is Dread, and I'm gonna get to that in a second. But yeah, Fiasco teaches a thing that takes a long time to get into improvisers' heads. Oh no, you said yes without context because I gave you an or. So anyway, it takes improvisers years to like figure out how to make those assumptions like regularly and create a strong scene dynamic and a strong relationship. Dread or Fiasco provides you with that beautiful, beautiful framework and like just tells you to go. And because it gives you that framework, like really, those character motivations are all you need to make a game work. Like that's it. So play Fiasco, play it a couple times because like it is still possible, even with the wonderful framework that Fiasco provides, to not like get it, for it to not work. Ooh, improv warm-up games. Goodness, it's been so long since I've played an improv warm-up game, but I think because we're transitioning out of my praise for Fiasco and how it teaches improv, and it should teach improv because Jason Morningstar studied improv for a long time and he is very good at it, and he channeled a lot of that into Fiasco. So let's talk about improv warm-up games. Okay, I think at the table, it's a little weird to actually do improv warm-up games, but there might be a few tables that will like jive with it. One of my favorite warm-up games, I think it's called Jinx, and the point of it is to create a group mentality and try to get everybody's mind on the same wavelength. The way Jinx works is you have two people start off by just saying a random word. They will look each other in the eyes and they will say the first word that comes to their mind on the count of 3. So you might get baseball and you might get floor. So somebody says baseball and floor. So it is then it passes to the next person, like one person, the person who says baseball in this situation, will look to the other person at like on their left at the table instead of their right. They will stare each other in the eyes, and these people are now trying to say the word that is the exact middle ground between baseball and floor conceptually. So you might get one person saying field, and you might get the other person saying base. And like ideally, both people would have the idea for field. And if you both say field at the same time, then what you've done is trained yourselves to think in the same way. And the whole point of the Jinx exercise is to get everybody to think like each other and make a connection with each other so that like you can anticipate each other's desires and wants in an improv team or an improv show. So if we take this lesson and we put it in games, like it's a great thing to help people like start not just like listening to somebody when they're describing what their character does, but like actually sit there and think, man, I wonder what Kat wants for Lynn in this scene, and I wonder how I can give it to her. Or, I wonder what Kat is struggling with right now in Lynn, and what is going to be the thing that I can do as Bacta that will help bring that out more. It is trying to get your players in this instance and you to think like each other. Because if you think like each other, you can care about each other, and you can like start to, yeah, exactly, Kat wants more kissing, obviously. And you can start to create moments together that are done with each other in mind. And really, what makes good improv is caring about the other people's ideas. Like, I say this a lot. The rule that we hear all the time in improv is yes and, but a more accurate way to put it is your goal as an improviser, as a GM, as a player, is to make another person's ideas important. And you make them important by listening to them, caring about them, and coming up with something that makes them cool and good. Like one thing that I think is a good example of this on One Shot, if you listen to our Scoundrel in the Deep game that I played with oh my gosh, from Party of One. God, guys, I curse myself. Jeff Stormer, with Jeff Stormer from Party of One, who I just recently played Hot Guys Making Out with. That is a role-playing game, not just like a fun activity. Yeah, Jeff Stormer in Party of One. We played Scoundrel in the Deep, and one thing that I tried to do every time he would come up with a detail about the situation that I was in. Yeah, we'll talk about No Butt in a second, Straw Dog. Anytime he came up with a detail about like the horrible dungeon that I was in, I tried to take that detail and make it seem dangerous. Like when I was overcoming obstacles, I didn't make it easy for my character. I made it hard. I made it so that things in the game really injured me. And like that I struggled to overcome them. And the reason I did that is I knew that Jeff's goal as the game master for this game was to make a threatening, spooky environment. And if I had a character that like struggled to exist in this environment, even when he was succeeding, everything about the story would seem more frightening. And like the atmosphere of it would be more intense. So that is me very, very, very plainly trying to make Jeff's ideas and what Jeff was doing as a game master, make those seem more important by adding extra details. That's what the yes and is. Yes, I understand what you've said, and here's my contribution to what you've said. So yeah. Like that is, I think, the cool thing. Let's talk about another role-playing game that I think is great for learning improv, and that is Dread. So Dread is one of my all-time favorite role-playing game designs, period, because I think it perfectly recreates the genre that it is trying to mimic. Dread is a horror game for those, I can't imagine anybody in my audience doesn't know because I always talk about Dread. Dread is a horror game where instead of rolling dice or using playing cards or anything like that to do resolution for a scene, it's a horror game where there's a Jenga tower in the middle of the table, and if you're doing anything where there is a chance of failure, you have to pull a brick from the Jenga tower and place it on top the way you would with Jenga. And if the tower falls, you die. It friggin' rules as a game because no matter what you do as a game master, anytime PCs have to act, they have to pull from that tower. And that tower is getting more and more unstable. And it is always a physical reminder in the middle of the table that is always there to intimidate players that the situation that you're in could kill you. That makes it so that no matter what, whatever happens in Dread is going to make a tense moment. Like, even if it's a fairly innocuous thing like trying to unstick a locked door, players know if they're trying to overcome that, they are doing something that could kill them. They don't know where the danger is coming from. They just know the danger is there. And as a game of Dread goes on, it gets more intense and more dangerous. So what Dread can teach you about improv is how to pace something. Because you really have to pace your threats and what's happening with the stability of the tower. Because you're not gonna, like, it's so unlikely. It can happen, but unless your players are just very, very bad at Jenga, you're not gonna kill someone early game. You're gonna kill someone later on in the game. Unless, you know, no, you're gonna kill someone later on in the game when the tower is very unstable. And like, you know that. There's no random dice roll that's affecting that. It is the sheer stability of the physical object in the center of the table. So you as the GM can't just have the axe murderer run out immediately and start hacking away at people, because it's going to take forever until that axe murderer is a viable threat. what you have to do is fill your spooky house with sounds that imply that a murderer might be there. Or you know, signs of that somebody that they don't know is in the house, or make them go on spooky chases and whatnot. Worried song, if you're awful at Jenga, that will make the game more intense, so you should do it. But anyway, it will teach you pacing, and it will teach you how to create details, and it provides you with, as a game master, with training wheels, because it promises you, Dread says, hey, this game is going to have a physical object that makes it intense no matter what. So you, as the GM, don't need to worry about doing a good job or a bad job in those terms. You just need to worry about like juggling what your story is and how it's happening. So it just takes something that is normally a concern in improv and pulls it off the table so that you don't have to worry about it. And I think that's great. So I would recommend playing Dread. And you probably only need to play it a couple times to like get the lessons that it can teach you. The last thing that I want to talk about as far as improvising is Apocalypse World. Or not Apocalypse World, but like anything powered by the apocalypse. Powered by the apocalypse is good for improv because everything about the way the game is played, asking players for details, players rolling dice in order to attain the privilege of asking you questions that you have to answer, all of that is just sort of breaking down how improv functions. And a lot of the GM move sheets, a lot of the basic moves, a lot of the player moves, they're all like kind of neat improv things that you could apply to any game. So like reading any Powered by the Apocalypse system, or like any really well-regarded Powered by the Apocalypse system, is going to teach you some improv stuff. Playing it will teach you some improv stuff. Dungeon World is a great one if you're mostly familiar with D&D. I think Monster Hearts is probably my favorite. God, I really do like so many Powered by the Apocalypse systems. But Monster Hearts is great. It can be a little intense if you play it more seriously. Masks is wonderful for it. Masks that I played on one shot, and it's still one of my favorite games because I really, really like superheroes a great deal. And Masks does a great job of creating superhero narratives. And if you're very familiar with comic books and the stories and how they work, it will create those comic book moments very easily. And you, as a comic book fan, will be able to trace how the game guided you to make those decisions. And then you can use that, you can use those skills, and you can just apply it to other games to create similar dramatic narratives. So yeah, those rule, and that is my advice for improv. And it's practice. It's practice, practice, practice. You just gotta put yourself in situations where you gotta come up with things. And probably the easiest way to do that is running games that have higher improv elements to them. Oh, wait a minute. No, we're not done with this topic yet at all. We're not done yet because I need to talk about micro games. Micro games like Honey Heist. Micro games like Everyone is John. Micro games like Lasers and Feelings. These games rule. Honey Heist is now, like, when I compare Lasers and Feelings, like, used to be my go-to game for stuff like this, but I think Honey Heist has like innovated it a little bit further. They're both very, very similar games. I just think Honey Heist is a little bit better. Honey Heist is a game where you play bears who are stealing honey from HoneyCon 2017. You have two stats. They are bear and criminal. Already, you can imagine just like hearing that basic framework of the game. Like you can imagine the crazy nonsense that you're going to get up to. And all of the character creation aspects of Honey Heist and all of the little rules things in Honey Heist sort of trend towards interesting wackiness. In the same way that Lasers and Feelings does. I just think Honey Heist has a little bit more bite to it. It might be because it's a newer game to me and I'm more excited about it. But if you want to know more about Honey Heist, if you're a Patreon backer, we played it. Yes, Hats and Jerry Seinfeld. We played Honey Heist for the Secret Archive with one of our Patreon backers and Drew Merzieski from Warda. So if you want to know what that game plays like and you're a Patreon backer, you can just go listen to it right now. Stepping back into it, the reason that I like microgames is microgames are designed with a great deal of intention. Microgames don't have sprawling 200 pages to account for every situation that might come up. So they channel you towards very specific situations and have rules to operate within those situations. So a microgame will take some of the, oh my God, I could do anything right now. I'm in a role-playing game where literally the point of it is you can do anything. Like that choice paralysis can bring down a lot of people. Microgames are sort of designed that like, no, you're in this very specific situation and you only have these tools to move forward. So having all of that limitation put on you actually frees you creatively a lot. It provides you with the tools that you need to go forward and make a wacky situation. I like Everyone is John a lot for dealing with players who maybe don't know how to roleplay as well or have been more in their shell and aren't as creative, because it is a very give and take game. There are only specific situations where players can even act at all because they have to bid their willpower in order to do stuff. So there's a very short period of time where each player is going to have focus, and during those periods, they're going after their goals. The only input they have is a situation they're in. So they're like, okay, I know the situation I'm in. I know what I want to do. How do I make that happen? That's improv creativeness that they're dealing with. They've just taken a lot of choices that could have otherwise mired them into indecision off the table. So I really like Everyone is John. I will say that there are some people who like don't like that Everyone is John like sort of well, not even sort of, definitely deals with mental illness in a not sensitive way. You know, it is using like film like portrayals of multiple personalities, like a thing that is very much like not real, or at least doesn't work the way we always portray it in movies. And it's like generally insensitive. The solution that I've come up with that, if your group is chill for it, is instead of saying John has multiple personalities, you can say that John is possessed by demons or ghosts that have like different specific obsessions. And that way you've taken it out of the space of mental illness and put it squarely in a supernatural place, which I think a lot of people, generally speaking, are cooler with. So if you've got a group that are like, I don't like Everyone is John, it squicks me out because of the mental illness thing, that's my patch for the game. Okay, so now that I've done that, I think that's all I have to say about learning improv. I want to jump over to the responses to my tweet so that we can get some of the chat questions answered. Oh my goodness, instead of clicking on the tweet, I opened Twitch again. I don't want to do that. All right. Let's see. Jess, I'm going to skip over you for the time being because like you can just ask me questions in real life if you want to ask me questions. And also you're going to be the subject of Hero's Journey someday. So like you'll have me all you want. Oh, Joe Hadfield. Well, I know you've been asking questions, so I am going to answer your first question. I'm running into issues GMing heteronormative relationships. Obviously, there's many in media, but they tend to be cliche and awful. Tips? Okay, interesting. Joe, since you've been in the chat, like I hope that you're still around. Yeah, so, sorry, Jess. Like, is one of your problems in portraying heteronormative relationships, like I don't know if you identify as queer at all, like, is it like you're an outsider thing or your only understanding of relationships comes from media? That might be something that I need to like do this more in depth. But gosh, running into issues. What kind of issues? I'm interested because like, I think there's no wrong way to run relationships. Like even the wacky stuff that we see on TV that like isn't good or healthy is still coming from a real place. You know, that there are people who are in like bad, shitty relationships. Like it's definitely happened to me. So like, I don't think you can go wrong in portraying a relationship. I will say that, and I also kind of want to know, are you having trouble portraying relationships as the GM, like from an outside perspective, or are you having trouble portraying relationships as a player? Because those might be very different answers. But I guess the best way is to jump right in it. My advice in almost all situations is if there's an aspect of play that you do not understand, the best way to deal with it is to play a game that is sort of designed to take it on. And I think one of the best places that you can look for advice on how to deal with relationships is Emily Cairboss's Romance Trilogy. And one of my favorites in the Romance Trilogy is Breaking the Ice. Breaking the Ice is a very simple game. It is about two people who are on a first date. And are like mechanics for showing the other player like that you like what's happening or you don't like what's happening. And the whole game like sort of determines whether there are more dates to follow. Excuse me. But the majority of it is about having conversations, and it sort of teaches you how to have conversations. One of my favorite things that Emily said about the game is she thinks Breaking the Ice is a great game to flirt with somebody with. Like it's a great thing to like sit down with somebody and use the game to flirt with them, which I think is super fun and cute. Okay, yep, you're queer and you find it difficult to run into straight relationships as a GM or with another player. Okay, hey Joe, yeah, I'm so glad that you're in the stream. So you're going to catch up, with probably the advice that I'm giving like a bit later. So I'm gonna finish talking about Breaking the Ice first. So Breaking the Ice is just a way to understand wow, okay, come on guys. We don't need to be mean to heteronormative relationships. It is a way to understand how humans interact because Breaking the Ice works for straight people, Breaking the Ice works for queer people, Breaking the Ice works like if you are playing gods or like beings that are separate from people and beyond people and all this good stuff. Because it's just how you have a relationship and navigate a relationship with a person. And it sort of gamifies what people get out of relationships. So I would recommend playing Breaking the Ice, and I would recommend role-playing as a heterosexual person, whether you want to role-play, you know, a man or a woman, or, you know, a like gender fluid person who also happens to be heterosexual. Actually, like, man, gender fluidity and heterosexuality is like an interesting concept because I don't know, like, if you count as both or, well, I mean, it's gender fluid, right? There's no definition. So like any relationship is a heteronormative or a heterosexual relationship because you're both different. Anyway, no matter how the sexual politics of like that situation works, like play a character and like play with somebody and do a heterosexual relationship. Because I think the thing that you will find is that at the end of the day, relationships are just a thing that happens between thinking beings. And if you're playing a relationship like it's a gay relationship, as a heterosexual person, you're doing it accurately. Like people and relationships, like no matter what bits are going on, like it sort of all evens out. And like I cannot imagine sitting at your table and having you play a heterosexual character and me stop you and go, no, that's not what would happen with straight people. Like, I don't think there's a way to do it wrong. I just don't think there's a way to do it wrong. But I think Breaking the Ice is a great game. Yeah, no matter what bits are going on, because life is all about bits at the end of the day. Yeah. So I think Breaking the Ice is great because it sort of like teaches you just how conversations work and how relationships work. After that, like, God, you know, Joe, I'm sorry that like I feel like I'm giving bad advice. It's happened. It's happened. Well, I guess I'll apologize because like I don't think there is a way that straight people act like super differently from queer people, like in a relationship. I guess I would need to understand the specific situations that you're running into. And what I'll say is write me an email detailing what you're dealing with, and I will try to. Yeah. I think Death Star Dances just nailed it. Yeah. Like, God. Yeah. Tell me the specific situations that you're dealing with, because like I don't even know that I can help you as like a queer dude. So, you know, but I'll do my best. Like, yeah. Gosh, that's really. Yeah, it's worth saying it's, maybe I should have read the follow-up here because this is probably important context. It's GMing romance between an NPC and a PC. Huh. Yeah. You know, maybe, maybe talk to the player and like ask them what they are expecting out of the relationship, like out of game. And try to story map what they want is going on. Yeah, I'm there with you, Doily. Like I don't know, because like I feel like anything that I could say would like come dangerously close to stereotyping straight people. Like, and I don't want to do that. So. I'd say story mapping is a great way to deal with it, because like if they go, okay, like I want this relationship to go well for me, like I want to date this person, just ask them like, okay, like what moments do you think might happen? And like I will sort of, yeah, but they're not that hard. They're not hard if you've played games that sort of support those relationships. And that's one of the reasons I highly encourage people play Emily Care Boss games. The Romance Trilogy has a lot of different tools across their various games and how you deal with things like that. So I would highly encourage you to take a look at that. Monster Hearts is probably going to be a little bit less useful to you simply because it is so queer. But yeah, I would suggest playing Breaking the Ice. I think that's the best advice that I can get out of this situation right now. But please email me because I am very curious, and maybe I'll be able to address this later. Okay, let's look at Britt Barker. Britt Barker, at @thebrit_ish on Twitter, asks, For someone who's a brand new GM and has only ever played before, what kind of notes / pre-planning do you recommend? Oh, Baker? Oh my God. Hey, you know what? Dyslexia is a thing. But yeah, it is Britt Baker and not Britt Barker. There was a Barker earlier. Somebody was definitely called Barker, I think. God. Anyway, this is a pretty common question. And I think there's no super concrete answer that I can give you. The best answer that I can give you is actually the best answer that I can give anyone in their romantic life too, and that's experiment, baby. I would say it is probably best to err on the side of bringing a medium amount of notes to a game. You don't want to bring hugely detailed notes, and I think a lot of people for their first games try to bring hugely detailed notes to games. Experiment sexually for their first game because it's sort of like a security blanket, or they're really getting into personal play. Encounter design, making notes for session and session prep generally is a part of RPGs that I talk about pretty frequently, that I don't see talked about too many other places, that I call personal play. And that is when you're creating a character, when you're creating a world and nobody is playing with you at that point, you are still role-playing. You are still doing something that is like play, but you're doing it alone. And personal play is a really wonderful and rewarding part of role-playing games. Like, I think if you talk to Kat at certain points in her life, she prefers personal play to personal play. She prefers personal play to sitting down at the table because she enjoys character creation and backstory creation so much. She has a perfect story in her head, and when she comes to the table, it can only disappoint her. I often think of, when I'm thinking of Kat and her experience with playing alone, I think about what Terry Pratchett said about the patrician Vetinari in his books. He does not like attending concerts. He reads music sheets because the thing that he imagines in his head of the performance is so perfect that when he sits down to watch a performance, it can only disappoint him. I think that's beautiful, and I think that's how a lot of people, unfortunately, experience RPGs in some ways. And one way to avoid that disappointment is to cut down on the amount of prep that you do. Because when you try to anticipate player moves without them being in front of you, you run into imagining that your players will think like you more than they are capable, or will make decisions that you think are clever instead of decisions that they think are clever. And unfortunately, you only run into disappointment there. So I think when you try to dream up every possibility in preparation for a game, you run the risk of setting yourself up for disappointment, or setting yourself up, even worse, for confusion and fear when things don't move in the direction that you expect them to move. Things that I recommend bringing to game, some character names. Just have handy some names that you can give to NPCs, because believe me, the party will ask for names of NPCs that you did not see fit to name. So it is always very helpful to have that on hand. Another thing that I recommend bringing are stats for things. Know what monster is likely to show up and have that monster on hand. If there's a place where there are guards, you probably want to have stats for guards printed out and on hand, because players will jump to attack something or provoke you from needing stats for something more than you will imagine. Yeah, Muller Duck points out, like if you're playing the Fantasy Flight games, Star Wars, they have adversary decks that are very, very handy for that. So like, be sure that you have something like that on hand, just in case your players do something so dumb that you could not have possibly anticipated in it. It will just be very, very helpful for you to like know what that guard's spot check is. So yeah, have that. And I think it is important to know where where your game is taking place and like what's immediately nearby. Like, okay, they're in a small town. You know, they probably have a blacksmith, but do they have a wizard? Do they have a cleric who's capable of casting certain healing spells? What information might be here? Like, you know, thinking of like important things that a town might have, or like just knowing, you know, how many resources do I really want the place that they're in to have? Apart from that, this is where we get into me not being good with preparation. Most of the time when I sit down to play one shot, I have done no preparation apart from reading the dang rule book. That's it. Like, I think the feng shui games, what I planned out is like, I knew at the end of the first feng shui series that they were going to fight the Cobra Commander. And I knew that they would have to go through a portal for that because I wanted to show off that feng shui is like a time juncture hopping sort of thing. I knew that I wanted a chase scene. So I was like, okay, at some point they are going to get chased or they are going to chase people. And I thought it would be most interesting if that took place on top of a train. I also knew that JPC's character was good at driving, so I wanted to create an opportunity for him to drive. And I knew that the first fight was going to be in a pizza shop and I would have the fight come to them. Those are the things that I knew. Apart from that, I really didn't know anything else. And that is like one of my most prepped games. Gosh, I knew, no, I didn't really know anything for Dogs in the Vineyard. What games have I prepared? What games? Oh, Coneman and Tup! Coneman and Tup is one of my most prepared things ever. It is a mystery. For mysteries, I do more preparation than I do for most things. And when I say that, I mean, in a mystery, I have to know what crime has taken place. How it has taken place sort of fills in as PCs play through the mystery. For instance, like I knew that they had kidnapped Pranks and Rook, the like bounty hunters that were originally going to be in the apartment room that I was having Coneman and Tup investigate to try and shake down for their rent. Like, remember that Toydarian had said that one of the places that he was renting out was to two bounty hunters who hadn't paid him in a while. So Coneman and Tup had to go to that place and talk to those bounty hunters. And what they were going to discover is the bounty hunters weren't there, and the reason that the Toydarian hadn't been paid is because they had been kidnapped. They ended up skipping over all of that. But like at the end of the day, Tamlin still found the bounty hunters, even though he didn't know who this bounty hunter was. Like, he still found him in the droid's lair. So like, I knew that the crime had taken place, and what Kat and Johnny decided that they wanted to look into was the group of bounty hunters who the droid had actually hired to do the kidnapping. they were just much more curious about interacting with those characters. So I had to come up with ways for those characters to lead Konmin and Tup to the situation that they needed to be in order to move the plot forward. And it can be very natural to figure out, okay, what evidence is there for this crime when you know what the crime is? And really that's the seed of what you need to make a good mystery, is know what happened. One game that I think is really great for learning that sort of preparation is Gumshoe. Gumshoe is an investigation game where you know what happened, and players tell you how they are finding clues. And they do that automatically. So you just have to decide, how is biology relevant to the way this crime took place? And for a Konmin and Tup style situation, you could, with a biology check, know that Hergliks require vast amounts of water to be healthy. So if this droid is keeping this Herglik healthy, an inordinate amount of water is going to end up on the trash floor. So the clue that I would give somebody using a biology check to try and find a clue in the Konmin and Tup game is that you notice that there is an unusual spike in water levels in the trash deck. And what does that do? That tells them, I gotta look into the trash deck, and the trash deck is where this whole thing's gonna pop off. So it's gotten them into the right position for you to move the game forward. So Gumshoe is really great, and it can teach you a little bit about preparation. But honestly, prepare. If you find yourself preparing for hours and hours and hours and hours, pull back. And the things that you need are names for characters, stats for things, which I know is vague, and to know about your place and world. And maybe not even know about it, but be confident in answering questions. Not have the answers prepared for those questions beforehand, but give yourself the permission to say the truth, even if the truth is a thing that you happen to be making up on the spot. So yeah, that is my advice about prep. Now, Doily Spider has been in the stream saying very, very fun comments, so I have to answer their question. And they ask, any good tips for GMing a con game that needs to fight in a tight time frame, like, say 2 hours? Wow. Yo, 2 hours is a real tight time frame. Question Doily, is 2 hours your time frame for the entire session or just the combat? Oh, fit. Oh, good. Oh, good. Wow. Okay. So usually how I frame games is I put them in the context of modes of play, like an investigative mode or a or combat is another obvious one, or negotiation or something like that. If you break them down into scenes and you think of a particular scene and having a set of tools to interact with that scene, like in a combat scene, you're pretty much just gonna fight. In a role-playing scene, you're pretty much just gonna talk. In an investigative scene, you're gonna use skills. So I try to break things down into modes of play, and usually when I am running a game, a scene or a particular mode of play that might contain many scenes takes up about an hour. So I would say limit yourself to 2 modes of play. And those modes of play can be something like investigation and then combat. And that investigation should be a singular form of investigation. It shouldn't be, well, they can search for clues and they can talk to NPCs. It should be, they should search for clues or talk to NPCs. Because I think you will find that combat is probably, like, if it's a really combat heavy game. Oh, Doily, did you say what system you're using? Is it Monster Hearts? Is that the thing? I'll wait for the answer on that. But I think you'll find that like the combat is usually going to take about an hour to an hour and a half if it's not too elaborate. And like one activity of the things, yeah, dude, okay. So I would decide what you think the emotional climax roughly should be. Is it going to be characters getting in a fight? Like the way we used Monster Hearts on One Shot, like because we were trying to do a supernatural investigation, like horror mystery show, those shows pretty much always climax with a fight. But like in Monster Hearts, you have the freedom to like climax in other ways, like romantic and sexual climax, teehee. Like that's definitely a thing for Monster Hearts. If like it is all leading up to a sexual situation, one mode of play for you is like characters being in an intimate situation, characters being in a situation where they're like one-on-one, or, you know, in the case of a poly scene, like, you know, however many people happen to be in that scene, but like the context of the scene is like we are alone, and we are alone to pursue whatever we want to do together alone. And like if you have like, I'm assuming it's a con game, so there's probably not explicit sexual content, but like I don't know. I'm just assuming if you're playing with strangers, that's probably not the thing that's happening. But like, you know, intimacy play is like your climax scene, and like before that is it can be misunderstanding is a pretty good romance trope. Having a misunderstanding that happens between characters. And yeah, it does depend on the con very heavily, Molar Duck. So I don't want to jump to those conclusions, and I'm going to allow Doily to correct me if I'm wrong here. What was I saying? Oh yeah, like misunderstanding is a pretty big romance trope, and like that can be a mode of play for your Monster Hearts game, and that can take up about an hour. If each character like set has a way that they miscommunicate with each other that causes like angst and drama, that is like a whole thing. I hope it doesn't sound like an awkward sex talk from your dad, because I am way more comfortable about talking about sex to you people than your dad should ever be. But like the sort of problem and trying to fix a problem or make a problem worse is its entire mode of play, and intimacy can be its immediate follow-up. So I think, and like one of the things that sucks about this situation, Doily, is because Monster Hearts is such a living game, you are probably not going to know what the climax of the game should be until the characters have all been created, because you will see like what is it? I think it's strings? Yeah, you'll see the strings on different characters like attached to each other like very clearly, and you'll understand how the different relationships need to be nudged. But like maybe think of like a set of 3 climaxes that you are willing and excited to investigate. An intimacy climax, I think, is a good one. Monster Hearts, a violence climax is always a good one too. I'm trying to think of another thing apart from intimacy that like ends a story. And like that's plumbing the depths of romance. Honesty. Like I know honesty sounds a lot like intimacy, but like typically when in the romance genre, lies play a big part in something. Well, hey, I can always provide more climaxes, Molar. Lies are like a big part of how people communicate in the romance genre. So having lies break or go away is always a big moment. Like if in any romance manga or anime, like it's always a big deal when a character has made the decision to confess something. Really, even like misunderstanding and confusion can be its own climax if you really lean super hard into it. But I hate to say it because it feels like such a cop-out and it feels like it's not super helpful to you as a GM, but like the climax is only really going to be apparent when you have the characters laid out in front of you. I think other than that, it is modes of play. Limit yourself to 2 modes of play, and you will decide what those modes of play are based on the characters that you and the other people will create. One of the great things about Monster Hearts and any apocalypse system is the moves in those games channel you towards specific modes of play, and like based on somebody's role with a move, it will become very obvious to you what should happen next. Or if the game is functioning properly, it should. And if not, make up an excuse to make another roll. Let's see, we are at 9:28. I think I'm gonna do probably one more question here. And I am going to answer Leah Morris' question. Even though, how do I tweet her? I really did enjoy both your profile picture and your name. So Leah Morris asks, tips for encouraging party dynamics. My players seem more comfortable with interacting with many NPCs than one another. Oh, Leah. I'm so glad that you asked this question because it has an answer that is one of my favorite things to do in a game, and that's a bottle episode, baby! You gotta put those jerks in a situation where all they have to do is talk to each other. One thing in improv, when we are learning improv, that we have to teach ourselves is to stop coming up with random nonsense and start focusing on inter-character interaction. I will touch on, thank you, thank you, Leah, so much for this question. You have to find context and create relationships rather than just bringing in a bunch of silly nonsense, because like silly nonsense is fun immediately and has absolutely no legs and will provide you with nothing later on. Like really good improv is built on characters and relationships. So one of the games that they teach people to warm them up in an improv scene is to teach them how to chase character and relationship instead of silly nonsense and random stuff happening, is doing scenes where 2 characters are stuck in a life-threatening situation together. Like being trapped on a ski lift, like being trapped in an elevator, or being trapped underground in a Chilean mine. And instead of having that situation just happen to people, what you say is, you have been trapped here for 3 hours, and now the conversation is no longer about being trapped there. It is a conversation that has evolved out of you being there for a long time. So the rule is essentially, you're in this big situation where you're stuck with that person, and the one thing you can't talk about is the situation that you're in. So yeah, the Chilean miners are definitely on my brain because I'm a bim bam. Anyway, so I would say a fun thing to do might be to trap your players in a place. Like you have them walk into a room in the dungeon, and the door closes and they can't figure out how to open it. And hey, guess what? The solution to the puzzle that will open the door is having an interpersonal character moment. That's what the room wants, because you're in a room full of magic and whatnot, and the person who designed the dungeon is like, what I want out of the people in this room is to have an emotionally meaningful moment. And you can just like have them look around initially, and like once their search checks don't turn up anything, you can say, as the GM, you have now been trapped in this room for 3 hours. And you are now sitting together, eating rations. Talk. What are you talking about? And you have them talk in character. You know, if they can talk to you as an NPC, they can certainly talk to each other. And you can even jump things a bit further, like, you know, focus on a little conversation, and you should definitely tell them beforehand that, hey, this game is going to be kind of a bottle episode. You can, like, when one conversation like starts up and peters out, you can then go, okay, I'm skipping ahead in time another hour, and now you are having a conversation about Daedric's backstory. And so that will, you know, prompt the other people to go, oh, what's Daedric's backstory? And if the player starts to explain, you can go, oh, no. You have Daedric explain his backstory in character. And that should start something. And I think the rule for players there is questions are great. Questions about things are great. And like statements about things, feelings about things are great. It is a great way to sort of move a conversation forward. Is like literally trapping people and being like, this is the game, the way that you're getting out of this room. Or maybe you can even have like a poem on the wall that like explains to them, the only way you're getting out of this goddamn room is talking to each other, you jerks. That's the situation as the GM in a world of magic. You can absolutely do that. Now I think it's really time for me to talk about debriefs on campaign and why they're actually kind of good. Here's the thing about debriefs. It is a form that we created that is designed to create as much inter-party turmoil and chaos as possible. The way it starts out is for us to recap the thing that we just did. So in the debrief, we literally remind people, this is what happened in the story up to this point. This is what went down in the arc. That is useful for us as a podcast because it helps, you know, people who are listening along go, oh yeah, I remember them doing that. But it also helps the players remember, oh yeah, we did that. Then there are successes. It is a way for people to brag about their characters, which I think is always a rad opportunity to create for people that you're playing a game with. You know, people want to talk about their characters being cool and great. So just like letting them ground themselves in like, oh yeah, I'm playing a cool damn hero. So, you know, I feel at home in this situation, even though I'm talking instead of doing cool hero things. Then we have failures. Failures, what's great about them is somebody else in the party tells you why you failed. Because that can only lead to an argument. That can only lead to somebody being defensive. Or, like, I guess it could lead to a character going, oh, wow, I did fail. I do want to do better. I'm going to do better next time. Because that's character growth. Like, the result that you're going to get out of that is either an argument between characters, which is wonderful because it means two players are having feelings about each other's characters. And or you're getting character development, which is wonderful, which is like so hard to prompt in characters. Like, I mean, gosh, I like the Adventure Zone a lot, but man, Griffin has been trying to drag character development out of Taco forever, and I think he just friggin' got it. I think he just got the character development like a couple episodes ago. It's like rare and beautiful and a wonderful thing, and it's hard to create. So like, the two options that you have that come out of failures in debriefs is fucking rad. It's either people caring about each other's characters, or not maybe caring, but like having strong emotions surrounding each other's characters, or fucking character development, which is the best thing ever in the entire world. Okay, so if we move on from that, the next thing is mysteries. Mysteries, I think, is a fun thing generally because it allows players to think back on the thing they just did and decide, is there anything that we don't know that's helpful to you? This is very broken, wonderful. Is there anything that like we don't know that we could know more about? Because it forces players to think through the GM's plot and like try to find things that the GM might have been hinting at that perhaps they glossed over in a blaze of heroic idiocy. I think Mysteries is great. It also, you know, it's just an excuse to find out what your players think about the story for the game. Next up is Desires. Desires is great because it helps your players explicitly tell you what they find interesting about the game and what they want for their characters. So you can use that. It also has them explain that to the rest of the group. And because they're doing it in character, the other characters can then go, yeah, I support your revenge quest. I want to help you, you know, on your revenge quest. It's super rad. Blaze of Heroic Idiocy, I think, describes pretty much every adventuring party that I've ever encountered in my entire life. I don't know that I've ever seen a game of like competent, like shrewd, tactical warriors. I just don't think it's ever happened. Or at least I've never seen it happen. Anyway, it lets characters explain to you what they want, explain to each other what they want, and react to what other characters want in character. Yes, I will definitely export this to the YouTube. Excuse me. I will definitely export this to the YouTube channel after we're done here. And then, I mean, general muckery isn't something that we've really investigated yet, so I can't say what it is. And like all of the other like weird rules and decorum that we have about like what you can say. Oh shit! One thing that we've done, I think unintentionally, that we've unintentionally made a part of the debrief game, though I would really need to talk to Johnny and JPC about this, is there's one LaCroix here, there's a LaCroix here, and this is a beer. I need to talk to JPC and Johnny about this. One of the rules that we explained to Lynn is no questions except during the period of time that is specifically for questions after everybody has like completed their cycle in each round. And improv, one of the things that you're advised is to not ask questions during the scene. You want to make statements because statements are bold and they drive action, and questions put the burden of creation on a scene partner. Now, we stress about that a lot less in role-playing games because like questions are good. Questions prompt you to come up with ideas, and sometimes like at the role-playing table, that's what you need. But not being able to ask questions during the debrief forces people to really, as their character, take very seriously the task in front of them. So I think that works really great. So yeah, debriefs and bottle episodes are a really, really silly thing in campaign. Like they're the most aggressively silly thing that we do. And that's one of the reasons that I love them so damn much. But like there's also a lot of good in there. And especially if you are, especially if you are dealing with players like who just haven't been able to interact with each other as a group, I think like literally forcing them to do a campaign debrief might work. It might just work. So yeah, like debriefs are a fun little game that you can play within your role-playing game. And with that, it is 9:42, and Mel has to go to bed at 10, and I want to get home before then. So I have had a wonderful time talking with you all and talking role-playing theory. I really meant to do more plugging for the Dungeon Dome. Right now on Kickstarter, I am kickstarting an actual play project that if it funds, I will be doing one-shot and game design full-time as my only job. The Dungeon Dome, I think, is wonderful for a lot of reasons. It is an experiment in observed play. It is like a prototype for a lot of things that I want to do with our streaming games. But like also, it just means that I get to do this more, and it would be rad if that worked out for me. Death Star Dances, thank you for adding sexy into safe. So like, if you haven't already, please check out the Dungeon Dome Kickstarter page. Please consider backing. If you cannot back, pass it on to people that you think might enjoy it. We're doing really well. Like we're actually in a very strong position for our first week. I just have like regular Kickstarter anxiety about it. And the more people I have talking about it and passing it on and sharing it with other people, the better I will feel. Thank you so much to everybody who's backed so far for the wonderful opportunity that you're giving to me. It means the world to me. It really does. The other thing that I gotta say before I wrap up the stream is the table I'm sitting at right now is a Carolina game table. They sponsored the show by giving us a unbelievable price on this table. It is a beautiful table. You can see it on all the Wordus streams. You can see it on all the other board game streams. It's just wonderful. Let me double check this. I think I scheduled it for then. Yeah, next week on the 19th, the Dungeon Dome will be doing another match here on the One Shot stream. So if you're curious about the Dungeon Dome, why not sit in on a live match? The Dungeon Dome, by the way, for people who joined us a little bit later, is an actual play project that is a player versus player gladiator game that mimics professional wrestling. We are having the Compass Cats go up against new challengers, the Nothing, in a Hell in the Cell match. In the Dungeon Dome, Hell in the Cell is a little bit different than it is in professional wrestling. One of the characters going into this match will have been infected with a demonic curse that will slowly, over the course of the match, transform them into a monster who will kill the other players. If the other players manage to identify the monster and put the monster down, they will each win a small prize. And if the person who's turned into a monster wins, their character moving forward will be gifted with a curse that they can cast on other players once sometime during the Dungeon Dome. So the stakes are pretty high. I have no idea which character is going to be cursed. That will be randomly assigned. It is going to be a buck wild game, that I can assure you. Either the Ladies' Disdain or the Compass Cats will like not be able to trust their partners for a little bit and will have to work together with their would-be opponents. It is going to be rad. That is going to happen on the 19th at 8 p.m. You can set a reminder for yourself on our Facebook group by clicking that you'll attend the event. Other than that, that's my time. Thank you guys so much for sending in questions. Thanks for hanging out. I love you guys. And now, the long walk over to the computer that will be very silent as I have to unplug. See you next time, heroes!